Welcome to my channel. If you are a property investor or a landlord, you know that tenants can be stressful. But what if I told you that there is a way that you can avoid evictions altogether by following the right strategies? And today I've got Elize Le Roux with me from Xpello. She is the founder of Xpello, and their company does amazing things to avoid evictions altogether. Welcome, Elize.
Thank you for having me, Jaco.
Great. Elize, before we dive into evictions, why is it so important for landlords to avoid evictions altogether?
Jaco, evictions are so strenuous. It takes long, it's expensive, and it's emotionally draining. In that whole period, it could easily be up to 6 months. They earn no income. So it is important to try and prevent it as much as possible.
So what is the alternative, Elize?
The alternative to an eviction is proper breach management, Jaco. And that is very vital for every person that owns a property and manages a property.
Great. And what exactly is breach management, Elize?
Xpello specializes in this, and this is our approach with our tenants. We solve the problem. We identify why the breach happened, and we mitigate the risk by determining to see how we can eliminate it.
Elize, I've heard that one of the most important things that you can do as a landlord is to put the right tenants in your property first and foremost. How does a person do that, and how do you screen prospective tenants?
Proper screening is so important, and this can only be done with the correct documents. Now, the most important document that you have to get from your tenant is the bank statements. That will tell you if they've got affordability. Landlord, if you don't know how to read the bank statements, get an agent to help you. That's very important. Salary slips. See if the employment is real. See if the income is real. And then the credit report. The reason why I put the credit report last is because it looks at credit agreements, and a lease agreement is not a credit agreement. So if you can, TPN, which refers to rental collections in the past.
Great. Rental collections of the past is obviously important because you want to see if they paid previous landlords, right?
Their behavior is so important. That's going to dictate not just whether they can afford it, but if there's somebody that pays regularly and if they pay on time. So that information is of very big importance.
Most of the time, people's behavior don't change. So if somebody doesn't pay their clothing account, or somebody doesn't pay their car payment, or if somebody doesn't pay or didn't pay their previous landlords, chances are very good that they're not going to pay you.
Especially if they didn't pay the landlords in the past. Even you can pick up a history if they stop paying the last month's rent, because we know there's always a big dispute regarding the deposits. So you can preempt the problem beforehand.
Great. Then we have the lease agreement. Now, the lease agreement is your insurance policy, right? If you have a good lease agreement in place, you can operate from there and take a lot of action. But if your lease agreement is set up poorly, then you're going to get into a lot of trouble, right? So what should be in a lease agreement, and how do you make sure that you have a good lease agreement in place, Elize?
Jaco, you're absolutely right. A lease agreement has to be complete and full. So it's important to have all the parties' details, make sure that everybody knows what is their obligations. We've seen so often that there's information lacking. Information just on the email addresses of the tenants to make sure that you're able to send the notices, and make sure your legal clauses are there. Don't go just buy something from the CNA in the past. Make sure that you have something that's up to date, because legislation changes on a regular basis. Make sure your lease agreement is completed fully, not halfway, and also make sure that all the parties have signed it and the correct parties have signed it. If that is in place, you are protected. And I think I have to add, please make sure you add the body corporate rules, because that should be part of your lease agreement. Otherwise, you are not protected in that sense.
If you are a property investor that's into multi-lets, the house rules also becomes very important, because there are multiple tenants on a property that need to consider each other and take each other into consideration. So the house rules also becomes very important when you are looking at multi-lets. Elize, what about rent collections? This is often where the problem starts.
Absolutely. We see landlords not sending the invoices on time. And what I mean by that is actually 5 days before the due date. Don't wait until the 1st. So sending reminders, reminding people, because people do forget. I know that sounds funny, but it does. And also to tell them the impact if they don't pay. Just by being proactive, communicating with your tenant, that's going to increase your rental collections.
Great. I think most issues can be resolved with good communication with your tenants. But for some other reason, a lot of landlords don't like to communicate with their tenants. And this is often where problems come in, is a lack of communication between the landlord and the tenant. How would you handle communication, Elize?
So communication is so important. If a landlord don't see the way of communicating objectively with the tenant, they should rather have an agent. Problems can be resolved if it's dealt with without emotions. What we've seen in Xpello is, if we get involved early enough, we can prevent a lot of these disputes because we don't want it to escalate. So assess yourself. I think that's where a landlord really have to make the decision. Am I able to discuss this in a reasonable place? If not, get somebody to do it for you.
Let's say we've done everything correct and the tenant still refuses to pay you. What now?
The process has to start and we have to do an eviction in terms of the assets out in South Africa. And this whole process starts with the letter of demand by notices. And I think that is where it's important to make sure that you know what is required. So start the process correctly, and your foundation is the letter of demand, demanding, setting out what you want, whether it's the non-payment or the contravention of the Put Corporate rules. And then when that is done, to cancel the lease agreement. Then only one will be able to proceed with a legal eviction.
IPROP actually released an interesting statistic that said that 95% of tenants pay after receiving a letter of demand. So sending out the letter of demand on an attorney's letterhead is very important.
It is, and it has a big impact as well. And it's important to do it timeously. Many people leave it too late. And the problem is, then you're always going to be, your rent is going to be in arrears. So rather start the process early on and then do it properly.
What is a good date to send the letter of demand if payment has not been received?
So ideally, from a practical way, I prefer not later than 5 days after the due date, because it gives time for money to reflect. It gives time for a soft reminder, because you still have to look after the relationship with the tenant. If you go in too hard, too fast, you are going to harm the relationship.
Can you tell us a little bit about the formal eviction process? Let's say that the letter of demand has been sent, the cancellation of lease has been sent. I mean, obviously you want the tenant out rather than staying there not paying rent, right? So that's why we cancel the lease so that the tenant can move out. But let's say the tenant doesn't move out. What is the next step?
So I think, as everybody wants an eviction as the last resort, when it's there, you have to go full steam. So it's important to work firstly with an attorney that knows about evictions. Xpello has got dealing with 27 attorneys, and we know that not everybody can do evictions. So make sure you work with a litigant. This person will then start the process in the court. An application process is faster than a normal summons process. So they issue the documents out of the courts. Unfortunately, Jaco, even if you have the best attorneys, if I say fast eviction, you're looking at average of about 4 months to get your eviction order. So anything between 3 to 4 months to get your eviction order, and that's still a very good turnaround time.
Elize, where does the sheriff fit into the picture?
So there's 2 roles the sheriff plays, and this is also have an impact on your cost of an eviction. The first round, all court documents has to be served on the tenant and the municipality by the sheriff. And you always want them to do this fast, because an eviction is an urgent basis. That's costly. The second thing is, and this is where an eviction is always guaranteed, if you get an eviction order, that can be executed. So the sheriff will physically get you a quote, arrive with a truck, and remove the tenants from the property. So that cost is also going to be there, and it can easily be anything between 5 and 50,000 rand. All depends on how big is the property and so. But at least if you got that order, you know it can be executed.
Elize, this has been incredibly insightful. Thank you very much. Are there any final tips that you want to leave the viewers with?
Yes, absolutely. Jaco, I think it's important prevention. Prevention is key. Do proper pre-screenings, have your documents in place, and then have the right team in place if something goes wrong. Don't go at it alone, because you're just going to delay the process. Be prepared. Don't think it's never going to happen to you. I think that is the key things that is super important.
Great, wonderful. Thank you for joining today, Elize. Where can people find you?
Jaco, thank you for the opportunity. They can contact us on 082 349 8800, or they can go to our website, www.xpello.co.za, and our team will gladly answer any questions.
If you need help with your structuring and with your strategy to build your property portfolio, make sure to look in the comments and to click on the link to book a one-on-one consultation with us, where we can guide you through putting the correct structure in place and having the correct strategy in place. If you find this content valuable and you would like to receive more of this content, remember to hit the like button and to subscribe.